This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
You.
Silence, Earthling! My name is Darth Vader. I am an extraterrestrial from the planet Vulcan.
Hey, this is Diamante, and you're listening to Jay Scott on The Hook Rock, and you can get my new album, American Dream, out May 7th.
The same old faces and I hear that same old talk, and I'm searching for the latest thing I break in this routine. I'm talking some new kicks, ones like you ain't never seen. This is home. This is Main Street. It's our home, the only one I know.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Good evening to you. Welcome back to another episode of The Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Scott. Hope everyone's doing well out there, staying safe, staying healthy. We are part of the Pantheon podcast, the network of music podcasts, so check out Pantheon Pods, pantheonpodcast.com. You can follow them on Twitter at Pantheon Pods. They host a bunch of great podcasts like The Hook Rocks, such as Mistress Carrie, who just started her Westwood One show here this week, and she's located in Boston. You have Martin Popoff, the author and historian, my boys from Shout Out Loudcast. You have Carmine Apice and Vinny Appice doing a podcast as well on Pantheon. So there's so much more. Cobras and Fires on there. So much more, so much to listen to. Great product, great family to be a part of. So check them out. And also subscribe and follow wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it's Spotify, Amazon, or Apple. Give us a follow. Give us a subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at The Hook Rocks, or on Facebook. You can find us if you search The Hook Rocks. And give us a shout. Write us a review. Tell us what you think. We're always happy to hear back from you and what you think of who we're talking about, who we're talking with. And we'd like to welcome in today. We go back to Southern California, to the pier of Hermosa Beach. We had Mike on last year, fall of last year, where we talked about the guitar hero and the future of guitar. And we'd like to welcome him back. Mike Longacre from Mike's Guitar Parlor in Hermosa Beach, California. Great custom guitar shop. And we're talking about the ultimate custom guitar builder, and that is Eddie Van Halen today. What's going on, Mike? How are you?
It's great to connect with you again, Jay. Thanks for reaching out.
Hey, always a pleasure to have you. You know, the only complaint I have is we don't do this enough. We don't do it as many times as we should, but nevertheless, I'm happy to have you back on the show.
Yeah, maybe sometime when you're in California, you can do your podcast directly from the shop.
That would be awesome. That would
I mean,
be
it
really
certainly
cool.
has got you could see the pier from the window.
I'm going to do that. I'm totally going to do that.
Well,
that
I'll ink it.
that is something that must be done. Must be done.
Well, you got a great subject today, man. I'm excited about talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
There's so many things. That even personally.
Yes. In the fall, we lost the legend Eddie Van Halen. For me personally, I can only speak of, for myself, it was pretty emotional because he was such a part of my life growing up. The band Van Halen was such a huge part of my life. And knowing that he's not here anymore to make more music and to, give us the gift that he gave us, or keep giving us the gift that he gave us, was a little hard for me to overcome and mourn the loss of a legend, even though I didn't know him personally. I felt like I did. And, I got the idea because there's a lot of Van Halen fans out there that know the music, and there's also a lot of guitar geeks and guitar players out there that know all the tech stuff and the custom building stuff and what he meant to the guitar, the instrument, that sometimes I think the people who just enjoy the music don't appreciate or don't know what the impact was from Eddie Van Halen and the instrument of guitar. So that's what I want to dig into today, because I think it's a great topic and I think people will really enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. We all felt that ripple effect, whether you knew of Eddie intimately as, a creator of sound, of tones, of, countless songs that were, on the radio from when we were teenagers up till, modern. And I think social media in itself was proof that you couldn't get away from it. Like, even if you were really affected in a negative way, where you felt just like you really lost something and just were a little off for a couple of days, it was just everywhere, and all his model guitars and everything were just selling like crazy, and people pulling out their old Kramers and bringing them in to have them vitalized so they could play them. It really was amazing. It woke everybody up to what he really was, that he was an older guy, but he had done so much that it's easy to just get complacent and not realize what he had created, the wave of creation of things, tone to guitars.
It is, because, there's the story of him going through dumpsters when he was a child at this guitar manufacturer by his house. And, if the guitar wasn't perfect, the manufacturer would toss him. They would get rid of him, and he would go in there and he would take one part from one guitar, another from another, and he would build these guitars. And a lot of that is based on the situation with his family. His family didn't have a lot of money, and he couldn't afford to buy, a guitar at a guitar shop. So he had to figure it out. I mean, he tells the story in a lot of interviews about how he had a guitar, I think it was from Montgomery Ward's or something like that, or Sears.
Yeah.
And he,
it's materials on hand, right?
Yeah.
That's what you do.
And, for him to kind of have that foresight to do that, to get the sound that he was hearing in his head and to try to make the instrument better for him. I mean, obviously there was so much practicing involved too. I mean, there's these stories of him bringing his guitar to school and sitting at his desk, at English class, just doing scales, just walking around with it. Friends of his from his youth always said he had his guitar around his neck. And, those two components right there is why there was the legend Eddie Van Halen.
Well, he was so hungry, for knowledge. He was hungry for expression. And, clearly he had, a past of music. I know he was self-taught on guitar, but his, professional musician father had both of the boys playing piano from a really young age. So, it's no wonder that he was really comfortable with both fingers moving, in the direction that they were. And he ended up surely at least adopting that movement to the guitar eventually. Just like, why not? Why can't I do it on that? But it's not. This is more about the things that he's creating. But for you to bring up the dumpster, it's such a great story. Most of luthiers, like myself even, that's how we started. Someone said, "Oh, I got this guitar. It's just in a big pile in a box in my closet. If you want it, you can have it, but you got to build me one out of that box too." And I mean, that's how I started. And not being afraid to ask what you don't know. We didn't have YouTube videos and everything. You had, great luthiers of the time, that worked for me with like Nadine's music and Roman Wrists and Sammy Sanchez's and all those guys just helped me develop the knowledge of how to do things to guitar. But that Eddie did it on his own. It's just awesome.
When you think back of the history of custom guitar making and, being a luthier like yourself, the limitations of guitar were well known in the 70s, right? I mean, at that time,
oh yeah,
there really wasn't more you could do with the standard way of playing. Pedals are being developed in different ways to get, a sound out of it. But really, the only way to play the guitar was a certain way. And Eddie was the one that expanded that. He didn't set limitations for himself. And again, that goes to building something that he wanted to hear, even from not just the guitar, but from the amp and the watts and the amp and how it sounded, and trying to find a low end, a bottom end for better sound. That all went into it.
Yeah, clearly that he, as far as I know, that Frankenstein thing that you're talking about, that's like 1974 maybe, where he put a humbucker in a Strat platform with a Gibson neck bonded to it, and had basically one gas pedal on it. It wasn't all about tones and everything. I mean, his hands were able to draw tones. He could have gotten Brown sound out of a wagon, probably.
For those that don't know, and for those that have heard that term, what is the Brown sound?
Well, as I understand it, he had an amplifier, a Marshall 100-watt, and he plugged it into the house, and the lights, the indicator lights were low on it, like they're very dim, and couldn't get a fart out of the thing. And then he realized it was an English model with different voltages, so he tried to wire it into the dimmer switch of his house, and I think he blew out all the fuses, but realized that there was something there and went to a hardware store in the day, and they turned him on to the Variac, which is to vary the voltage to an amplifier, and tried it later, and it makes the amp work a little harder to get voltage, and that's where you get that nutty, front end of the amp tube getting, in a place that's not natural for them, and it's crazy loud, but I don't think that was a problem for him at that time.
It was almost by accident, sound.
Right? It was, again, to what you were saying about the guitars. He was looking for something, and then when he realized that the voltages was a change in sound, he tried to vary the voltage going into the amp to change the sound instead of varying the volume knobs and whatnot. And it ended up being that tone that everyone heard recorded through a mic into a board and onto a piece of tape was this thing that ended up being called the Brown sound. But again, it's with his guitars he was using, those old Explorers and some Strats and humbucker tones, but with the amp and his hands and the guitars that he had used for his sounds, that as a big whole, all those food groups together created what became known as the Brown sound, which is a good one.
Yeah.
Like if you hear the intro to that Ain't Talking About Love, it's just an A minor with, the notes plucked individually, but that pick sound that he had, that clicking, just super aggressive attack on the strings with that tone, with those pickups, and his just aggressive nature created something that does not sound like the A minors we grew up with. These aren't your dad's A minors.
You mentioned Ain't Talking About Love from Van Halen's debut in 1978. And prior to that, there are so many great guitar players in the 70s and the late 60s, you know, everyone from Hendrix and Page to Joe Walsh and Leslie West and you name it. But there was a similarity that tied all of them together because of those limitations that we talked about. You know, I mean, they all had their individual tone, and you can tell one guitar player from another.
Right, exactly.
Right, but it still was based on, I don't know if theory is the right word, or, you know, the familiarity of the instrument. And I've read and watched interviews with so many different guitar players, just how much they changed after they heard Eddie play. The one that comes to mind immediately for me is Neil Schon, who did tour with Van Halen, I think on the Van Halen 2 album in 1979, or maybe it was Women and Children first. It was one or the other. And when you hear Neil's playing up until that point, and then after that,
oh yeah,
it's completely different. I think of the song "Stone in Love" from Escape. You know, with that,
right.
You know, with more of a, you know, aggressive sound, aggressive tone in his playing, and that started to happen all over music. When Eddie came out, it wasn't just guitar fans and kids wanting to play guitar and sounding like him. It was his peers too, as well. They couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it really is one of those set of circumstances, I think, in my opinion, that when you hear something that's been added and you realize that it's the wave of the future, you know, all of a sudden everybody's got to start putting kale on their plates. It's what it was and what it had to be in a world where we were all listening to those albums going, God, how in the hell does that happen? Now there's kids, you know, on YouTube that are 8 years old playing Eruptions. Like it changed people's view of what they were capable of doing or not. Instead of saying, man, I'm never going to do that, to, oh man, I'm going to get a guitar and do that. It's just amazing. It really did change the scope, and all the people they toured with surely changed, because you're seeing the future of music, or the future of, I shouldn't say that, the future of stylings of a guitar, right? Like what could be done.
I also think too that, especially speaking for myself, hearing his playing and hearing Van Halen and hearing the tones and how he played, it gave the listener a sense of wonder. Like, because it was so out there. It was so from outer space, you know? And it was like, it wasn't from this earth. And it piqued the curiosity of people. People just wanted to see how he was doing it. And I don't know if there's been a musician since then that's been able to create that wonder.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge vacuum for styling and just pushing himself to do different things. I mean, it wasn't like he was a one-trick pony. There's songs where he flows in and out of course, he was known for his tapping, but, you know, dive bomb stuff on tremolos and strange tunings, but his picking by itself kept going through his career, where you could hear him change not just the tones and amps and recording stylings and everything, but his actual phrasings and everything. You could still tell it was him, but he was changing and morphing into, you know, do something different and new and exciting. And he was an innovator for sure.
There is that misconception. A lot of people do say, or maybe a lot of people, I shouldn't say, but there are people out there who like to say that Eddie never evolved as a guitar player. And I have to hold myself back when I hear that, because from Van Halen 1 all the way through to 1984 into the Sammy era, he was always chasing something, right? I mean, he was
incorporating piano. And just anyone that says he's just the tapping guy, just listen to the solo from Push Comes to Shove. That is just has everything. You just want to run someone off the road when you're hearing that solo. It's so just off the hook and has tremolos in it that are just wild, and some tapping toward the end, and crazy attack in the beginning, and it flows through the whole thing. It never sounds like, here's the flash, tapping guy.
Well, he had an incredible sense of timing too. To come in and out from rhythm to lead back into rhythm without missing anything. Because some people don't, or people don't realize that not all lead guitar players have great timing.
Yeah.
And for him to kind of, to be that, I don't know if you call it a single line guitar player where you basically play everything, without overdubbing from rhythm to lead back into rhythm, and he comes right back in like where he's supposed to come back in, and just the incredible sense of timing, which is just for a lead guitar player who's doing all these things during a solo to be aware of where he's at in the song is something that is not appreciated.
Yeah, well, clearly he has, genetically connected to the drummer that he was with for his lifetime, and was a drummer himself, as old folklore says. But I know that when you play with someone, if you're married to someone, you eventually take on a lot of their traits and things that maybe you didn't even like, or attitudes or thought processes, and it's inevitable when you're around something enough that you kind of morph into that. And I think, to your point, timing is one of the most important to keep the listener engaged, where it's not getting unplugged every once in a while because it's disjointed, or, well, that was a weird way to come back to it. Like you say, playing a lead, playing a rhythm, coming back to a lead, and not having it sound like you're doing that.
What do you think in terms of his evolution from the beginning to his last album? Where do you think the biggest growth was in him? Was it the tone? Was it chasing that tone? Was it his playing? In your opinion, what was it?
I think his biggest growth, or the biggest changes that he were making, was not being afraid to make change, because clearly he could have just stuck with being Eddie Van Halen, playing Van Halen 1, troupe. He's, written catalogs of music that no one will ever even hear. I mean, if you've seen those videos of him walking through his tape rooms and saying, I don't even know, no one even knows what these are, but they're just hours and hours and weeks and months of music that no one's even heard. And it's just kind of cataloged, and only I know how it's cataloged, and just keeps walking through the studio doing the tour or whatever. But I think just his growth of not being afraid of change. Like, remember he did like a whole album with Steinberger style, where it was like moving entire tunings through the Steinberger, utilizing the tool that was available to him, like a new cutting tool for a chef. And just says, how can I apply this to me that will be my voice? And that is a scary, scary place to go. I mean, if you think everyone's just going to love your stuff, I guess that's your jam, and good for you. But I think it's scary. So we can all try to start a new business somewhere, and it's something we've never done, and it's terrifying. And if you've got a crowd base that loves your stylings and loves your band, and all of a sudden you change the singer, or all of a sudden you change, there's piano in it now, or all of a sudden, you know what I mean? He was never afraid to do that. You could tell, because he embraced it all in. And that is something that is one of my favorite things about Eddie Van Halen.
Well, it's remarkable that here is this guitar god who's, starting a whole genre of shredders. And then he goes and makes the album 1984, and the first instrumental on there is keyboard. And then it goes into the song Jump with keyboard, and it's like, what is going on? Like, a guy that has started, I mean, guys like Satriani and Vai and Betancourt and all these guys are here because of him.
Yeah.
Now just says, I think I'm going to make a keyboard-based album. I mean, that's
awesome.
That's balls.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, like you said, that's got to be a scary place to go, but he embraced it.
Yeah, it's powerful. And to that, like, I kind of alluded to the Steinberger, is one of the tools, but he clearly pointed out to the engineer type people that there was limitations to the tools. And though I know Floyd Rose developed the Floyd Rose tremolo, and it's one of the biggest innovations for tremolo players that want to utilize its full capabilities and staying in tune. I know that they knew each other, and his needs were clearly on the drawing board of what Floyd Rose was trying to accommodate. So while he didn't invent the Floyd Rose tremolo, he definitely embraced what you could do with it.
And how did he? I don't want to say maybe the word discover is the wrong word, but how did he come across some of that, or felt that he needed something like that with his playing?
Well, I think again, just seeking what is available to him to try to. I mean, we're just inventing this stuff in our head. There's probably interviews with him where he got to talk about this. I heard he was just such a humble guy to like be in a room with. But if there was something there to be utilized, the drills on the strings, all that stuff, it's crazy. How do I incorporate that and not make it a mess? Or maybe the mess is good. And the tremolo thing was just something that was part of his. Very few people can use vibrato on a tremolo and in your left hand. If you're left-handed, you guess it's a little different. But if you wax between one and the other to make it sound natural both ways, or to utilize them both at the same time in a really cohesive way, he was a master at it. And clearly he needed it to stay in tune. I know it was popping out of the nut and everything for him, and he was trying to develop things up at the nut area himself to try to hold the stuff together. And the Floyd Rose just made it so that it was, a new planet for him. What
were some of the other things that he developed? Or, I know he's got, patents on several things.
Yeah, he had patent on that little flip-up leg that sticks on the back of the guitar, so he could flip the guitar up like a lap steel player would hold it, and do double-hand tapping and slide work on it, and then it would just fold back up while the strap was on you. So if you were standing up, you could just kick the thing back, and it would prop up against your body and hold it in a perpendicular situation for you. And that was one of his patents. And the other one, clearly the most famous one, is the D tuna, which, if you're not someone that understands tuning, there's a way to take the thickest string and go down a full step, depending on where your guitar is tuned to start from. But it allows you to have what's called a drop D tuning. And with a Floyd Rose tremolo, you can cause tuning problems when you try to go back. If you go slack on the string, once you're in D, you have to micro adjust it. And he developed a system that attaches to the existing hardware of a Floyd Rose. And with a little flick of your wrist, it'll go from standard tuning to D tuning, and then back to standard tuning. And it has a micro adjuster that you do when you install it. And then it's done. Once it's in, and it flows in from drop D to standard tuning effortlessly. It really was a huge breakthrough for guys that love doing drop tuning without, reaching over with your left hand and grabbing the tuner and tuning it, or stopping the band, for a second so you could hear yourself think, or go look at your tuner while you're doing it. Just flip the switch and there you go. It's done. Just powerful.
For those listening and don't know, what is, drop D tuning?
Well, that's the magic, right? It's as if you're holding a chord. When you move up and down the neck, you can really hold the first three strings, the thickest strings, with one finger, and it's as if you're holding a chord shape. So drop D makes you sound. It makes the guitar sound a little more bassy because you get to go to a frequency that's lower. That isn't. You don't even have that note of a D power chord when you're tuned to E, because it's one louder. But it's really powerful to have a tool that lets you wax back and forth between standard tuning and that extra low tuning with just one flick of the wrist. Just really cool. I've installed many of them here, and they do work. It's something to look into if that's something you do and have a Floyd and don't use it.
Plus, there was also, the use of the whammy too as well, right? I mean, no one really used it like he did prior to playing.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're talking like from 74 to 78. Randy Rhoads was doing it, but he was more of his stuff was more almost Baroque lines, classically incorporated solo phrasing, which, as we all know, is equally as different in its time and changing and groundbreaking in those styles. But his use of the tremolo was definitely in another place, and he needed it to be into for sure.
I think too. I mean, with his background in classical piano playing, and he has talked about being in these recitals, and him and his brother always winning because his mother, was one of those teachers that would always slap the hand and make him do it over again, and that perfection that was demanded of them. I think that translated into his playing too as well, and the influence of classical music on his playing. I mean, I know Dave Lee Roth brought that Dave Clark 5, that Beach Boy, that good time element, but in the backdrop, I don't even say if it's in the backdrop, but also in the forefront was that influence of just I mean, when you hear Eruption and when you hear the tapping and going up and down the fretboard, and you hear the the progression of his playing, it's almost like a classical music piece.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that early years of developing regimental understanding of music through piano, and having a professional musician in the family and his father, and having the dictator of having to get stuff done properly with the mom, clearly what you're saying, but that when you put that in a pile with a guy that was just hungry to play all the time and find the extremes of what an instrument was capable of doing, and if it didn't do it, try to develop a way to help it do what you wanted to do. All of those things made him what he was. I mean, his style helped him create, guitars. I need a flatter fretboard so it's easier to do big crazy bends on, or what scale neck do I need? All of those things. Even if he didn't know why he was doing it, he had to seek it out, and then it got to the point where he could develop his own guitar company, for crying out loud.
And that's really where he went, later on in his career, where he had a team of engineers and developers creating, his Wolfgang amps and his pedals and whatever, he wanted to do and chase after. He was developing that for the guitar player.
Right.
As far as you compare that stuff to Marshall and some of the other, brands like Orange, where does that, where do they compare? Where are they similar, and how are they different?
Well, everyone has their own secret best tone in their head, right? Everyone's not going to want Eddie's tone. Everyone's not going to want Leslie West's tone, to your earlier point, or, Larry Carlton. Maybe it's Joe Pass, or, jazz sounds or something. So every amp, is capable of creating a platform built around the type of sounds that you want. And clearly from Eddie's, shenanigans with the voltage regulator, Variac system, that, became very clear. You needed to have a master volume and then have a way to make the amp get distorted on its own and then adjust the volume to the listener. But each amp doesn't offer that. Everybody has their own set of tones. So I think amps, to your question, how are they different? They're different in the people who developed them were going after their tone, not making an amp that is everyone's tone. There's like the axe effect, the fractal unit just does everything. You can create every tone in it. It's a very deep program. You need to have great ears and know what you're looking for, or you're going to be a mess with it. You need to have an amp that's intuitive so that as you make small adjustments to try to get it closer to what you're going for with their preset sound, like a line 6, let's say, for example, where they've taken the greatest tones, let's call them, of Fenders and Marshalls and Voxes and Ampegs and everything, and put it all into one, quote, easy to use box. You can manipulate the tones from those areas of presets. And there are amps that do the one trick pony that might be what you want. Like maybe you want a really blown out, bright sound, and you can only get that from like an old Beatles box, like an AC30 or something. But you're going to spend, $3,000 to $5,000 to get something for that. And if you want it to sound like Brown sound, you're going to need to have another amp for that. And Metallica, is that if you're doing all those things. So I don't think it really is, can an amp get everybody's sound? I don't think that's really possible. They can get close, but if your ears are really tuned in to what it is you're looking for, I think you kind of got to have the amp that was developed for that. If it's a clean tone, get that amp. If it's a breaking up smoothly tone, get that. And if you're looking for the Brown sound, you might have to, get a couple of pedals in front of what you got and use your ear. You can get amps to do a lot of things as long as you're hungry to get that one sound and you have something to base it off of. Like you can go back to your headphones and hear what Van Halen was doing, or, like you said, Neil Sean. That's another really hard tone to get. It's hard to get AC/DC tones. I mean, you would think that is, just distorted guitar. That is one of the most elusive sounds I've ever helped clients develop from their rigs for live performances. And it's really rewarding when you get it, because they are hearing something else and they're going about it the wrong way, getting a couple, 3, 4 pedals. You're like, man, there is almost no pedals in front of that. And when they hear it finally, I had a guy with an orange amp that had like a flight pattern of pedals, and it ended up having one pedal. And he's like, really? I got to just not use any of these? And I plugged his guitar into that one pedal and into that orange amp, and it was exactly like Back in Black. It's so rewarding for him and for me, to make him swallow the pill of, look, it's not everything. It's less of everything to get that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty basic sound, right? I mean, AC/DC,
To the ear it is, but man, UAB, like what you think is AC/DC and then play it, it is really elusive. It's almost like playing clean and mixing it with a higher gain, but still very clean. Every note, you can hear every note. It's not so fuzzed out or so overly driven or distorted that it becomes a mush. It's really it's articulated. Very strange.
We're talking about Eddie Van Halen. One of the songs, or one of the albums that he bonded with Wolfgang, was Powerage by AC/DC. Like that was that was the album that like really brought them together musically. And I know Eddie's gone on record as saying, oh God, I can't remember the name of the song off Powerage. It's got the quote 10-cent millionaire in it. Down Payment Blues. Down Payment Blues was like one of his favorite AC/DC songs.
So cool.
Or 50 Cent
I love
millionaire.
that his son is involved too. To me, that's the proof of the passion in Eddie's musical pursuits, because you can't, my son's 23 and he's a photographer and ended up being a drummer, and everyone was always saying, hey, when's he going to play guitar? And I was like, when he begged me for it, because I'm not going to make him play something for me. He'll hate it. And, the fact that they played together just warms my heart, and it really gives me, faith in connection. You have a son, so it's like something you secretly do dream about, that's like, wow, how cool would that be for him to love what I love doing and do it on a professional level on a stage? I mean, how many of us get to do that? It's really cool.
I said, when I did a tribute episode to him after he passed, what it must have been like for him to look to his right and see Wolfgang, and then look behind him and see Alex. And,
come on.
Coming to this country with nothing. And, here he is. He's got his brother that's been through the trenches and the wars with him. And then he's got his son who is his legacy. His son's going to form his own style of music and his own brand like he did. But the legacy of him playing in his passion, as you mentioned, lives within his son.
Yeah, it's really cool. Arenas of people singing his songs, playing with his family, in decades. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's a dream. It really is.
That's why, people have the argument, Sammy or Dave. And at the end of the day, it's all Eddie. It's Eddie, as whether you like Sammy Hagar more than David Lee Roth or vice versa, it's Eddie playing guitar. That's what Van Halen is. That's what Van Halen is. Not Van Halen without it. I mean, I hate to state the obvious, or hate to, say that because it's so clear, but I never understood that argument because I like both.
Yeah, I loved it all too.
Yeah.
And truly, to what I was saying earlier, where he would take something that was given to him and just extract everything possible from the instrument. And I'm not suggesting that, the Sharon or Sammy Hagar or anyone else that sang with him, even on, anything, he was able to take a singer and incorporate that to make it something new and special and changed, and not afraid to do it. It's just awesome.
It totally is. I mean, what do you think, when you do what you do, custom building guitars, because you have that sense of wonder and you have that creativity, you have a sound or a tone that you're chasing, and you understand when someone else is looking for something too. How much of an influence is Eddie on your field of work, what you do?
That is a really, really great question. It is inevitable that I was going to build guitars close to Eddie's style, with humbuckers in solid bodies and flatter fretboards. Everything that he was doing in the beginning, that not only did it look cool, but they clearly had a sound that I was chasing. And how do I make these play better? And here I am today, 35 years with the guitar stuff, and doing setups for 20 people a week, which it's not the only thing I do, but I love it. And custom building guitars for people. I had someone recently asked me to build one for a soccer team, like a custom design, custom painted, custom necks and tremolos and everything. And you get to tell them what each piece will do. And it's really fun. And it's really fun because I have watched that guy build all of those weird guitars. And like you said, just picking them out of the trash and figuring out how to do it on his own, to me, is inspiring. And so I think most of all, just to feel inspired by Van Halen for sure from the beginning.
To go through that thought process, like when you're putting together something and you're chasing a sound, you're chasing a tone, and you're trying to figure out what's going to get that sound that you hear in your head, or if someone's been able to explain it to you the right way, chasing their tone. How, in the mind of Eddie and in what you do, how do you go about the process? I mean, I'm sure everyone's different, just like everyone's playing is different, but how do you kind of break it down and find what you're looking for?
Well, the first thing, it's really not hard at all. The first thing you do is ask them what they're playing through currently and what is the type of guitar and who is it they're trying to sound the most like, so that their ear is so tuned with that one song. And then it's a lot easier from that. That's the first step. If they're like, I don't know, I just want it kind of, neat. You don't have anything to compare it to. And once you have a song, then, and you look at their guitar and you're like, well, you're clearly using, a screwdriver for a hammer. Let's try this. And then because I have enough inventory of so many different things and some Star-owned stuff, it's easier to have them, like maybe they're used to a really fat neck with single coils, like a 50s style Strat, but they want to have, to what we were just saying, like AC/DC. Let's just use that. You're never going to get a Strat. I don't care what modeling amp you've got, or, you could put a different pickup in there if you absolutely love that neck. Maybe that's our answer here. Let's hear what that pickup styling sounds like through your amp, and give him a guitar with the pickup he's thinking of putting in there, or make a suggestion. I think you're using the wrong amp. Or it is super rewarding to have someone tell you what they're trying to get as a sound and develop a guitar and make it play through their existing amps and have it be the sound that they're looking for. That's like the ultimate. You might not make as much money doing that, but it's short of having like your son come in and give him his first couple of chords and having him just love the guitar from that day and end up going and buying guitars and playing chords and can't get off the computer learning new songs. That's the most rewarding, probably.
I still remember being in your shop with him and him telling you, you asked him what kind of guitar he wanted, and he goes, a Flying V. And you were like, you need some meat around that, around that neck to get a certain tone, because it's very hard to get a certain tone on a Flying V because there's not a lot of wood, not a lot of bass around what you're trying to do.
Aside from not being fun to hold when you're, that age and, standing there holding a V, there's nothing, no strap or anything. You're just kind of fighting it.
It's interesting. And then, now he loves, the Strat and Gibson style guitars, which both have unique sounds too as well.
Right. How old is he now?
He's 16.
Oh my God. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. I was in he had to get his guitar fixed because he has this habit of pulling the cord out too hard, and he's always got to get it fixed. So I was getting it fixed while he was in school one day, and I was asking the guy about Telecasters, and he goes, "What are you looking at a Telecaster?" I'm like, "Oh, son likes Richie Kotzen." He goes, "I don't know if there's anyone else that can get a tone out of a Tele like Kotzen can."
Yeah.
He goes like, your son may not get that tone that Kotzen's getting,
Yeah, well, I just built a Telecaster that is like this chameleon purple to blue Metaflake. I called it Lowrider because it just looks like lowrider paint, but it has an extra fret on it, and it's a really flat profile, and it has 2 humbuckers in it, and I have it so that they're splittable, so you can get a Strat style tone or a Tele style tone out of it. It has a custom made Tele bridge that holds a humbucker, and so there's a 5-position switch that lets you switch between single coil or Strat sound to humbucker, which is more like Les Paul tone, and it's alder, so it's heavy like a Les Paul, and it's a Tele you can actually get that Kotzen tone out of. So it can be done.
Interesting, yeah, because Teles are really bright sounding, and the way Richie just plays is just, I still, every time I watch him play, my mouth drops when he's not using the pick and he's just doing all these different kinds of things on it. It's just amazing.
Yeah, well, he's got a new album out too. You should interview that guy. He's just so
I did
inspiring as well.
with Adrian Smith. I just had him on in
Oh,
March.
I love that.
Yes.
Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he came on, and he came on last year too when he did the 50 for 50 album. So, great guy to talk to. Really,
Yeah, so cool.
just very has a great perspective on things, and interesting style of how he produces and writes music.
Yeah, for sure.
Back to Eddie, we've talked about the Brown sound, the drop D tuning, the tapping, Floyd Rose. What is his probably biggest influence on the guitar, the instrument?
Well, most people would say the tapping, because he incorporated it so much into his styling that became a signature thing for him. And I think hit that, and the fact that he just loved playing like that. Everyone will say, what was the thing Eddie loved the most about it? Just playing, period. Just all the time. Always playing. He could be talking to an interviewer and just playing while he's talking. It was just amazing. So inspiring as a guitar player to see someone so connected to an instrument that they're just not even thinking about it and they're playing. I love that.
Is there a guitar solo, a song by Van Halen that you regard as his biggest crowning achievement?
That is so loaded. Everyone's got, it's like looking for guitar tone. I love that push comes to shove solo. That's, to me, like everything he could do better than so many people. And he puts together this tapestry of every different style he did into one solo.
My son says that's his best solo. In fact, we just had this conversation like 2 weeks ago. He's like, Dad.
Which one?
Push Comes to Shove.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because the song is deceptive. It's not like that just slamming rock song. But man, when that thing comes on, it is on.
I always liked Fools. Fools to me, especially the intro, that guitar solo in the beginning, it just sets the tone. It's just got a great, and of course, Mean Street too is so defining as well.
Yeah, we could do this radio show for an hour and just go over every song that we love. I mean, as far as rhythm goes, I think Atomic Funk is another monster. Just crazy good songwriting. Come on.
I can't wait for the day for some of the stuff that he's got in his vaults to see the light of day, because people always make the argument. People always make the argument. Well, if it was good, it already would have been released. I don't know if that's always the case. Maybe I don't
think so either.
Yeah,
no way. He wrote too much of it.
Right, and maybe he couldn't find a home for it sometimes. Sometimes you've got a really good lick or a really good solo or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, it's not done.
And it's not, and he can't find the right vehicle for it, Oh
my God. Can you imagine just being able to listen, even just edited so it was just the hooks of good ideas that he had that never saw the light of day as far as we knew? It would be worth an album.
I would totally buy an album of just like 30
Me
second,
too. Let's
30
get on
second
that.
clips of him of his playing.
The hooks that never were. Oh
Yes.
my God.
Over 100 riffs for, $500. I'm like, sold. I'm buying that.
You heard it here first on J Radio. Jeez Louise. Please.
Yeah, I mean, George Lynch was talking about that too about a year and a half ago when I had him on about, he's got all these like ideas on his phone. And I go, why don't you just release you just humming riffs, And I'm like, I'd buy that. He's like, you would? I'm like, absolutely, I'd buy your ideas, like stuff that hasn't made it. He's like, maybe I'll do that. I'm like, just do like a limited release of like 500 copies or something like that. It's been a blast, man. It has. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoy it.
Me too, Jay. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Please don't be a stranger. And I still think it's a good idea for you if you come out here with your son. Get him in here. Get him on microphone with you and we'll do your show from here. I don't have to be in the show. I'll just be the guy standing in the corner making mimosas or something.
That is a totally awesome idea. I have to do that because he loved your shop. And, I still show him pictures of him playing with all the guitars in the background. And I'm like, yeah, this is like the first day you learned how to play.
That's great. Oh man, wait till you see the new one across the street where I'm at now. Jesus, it's just another planet. It's just out of the box crazy. Like 5 times. I sold more guitars in the last 8 months than I did in 2 years in the other building. It's insane.
That's a good question. I mean, are you seeing that because of the pandemic? I mean, I think we talked about this before where more people aren't putting off the purchase that they've wanted, a guitar they've wanted to buy anymore.
Yeah. Or they had, they were supposed to go to Europe for their trip and they didn't. And they want more me. And it's just money in the bank. And I've always wanted that thing. And Mike's right down the street. And it surely had something to do with it. It's not people that are, well, I've got time. I'm home. I'm not at work. I want to learn to play guitar because it's very boutique-y. The guitars are, very specialized weights or colors or owned by somebody special or, 60 years old or, whatever. And they're moving like just crazy.
I love it. I just read an article too where Gibson was out of inventory Guitar Center. Guitar Center was out of inventory.
Well, guess who makes their guitars? Guitar Center doesn't make them.
Well, yeah.
It's like all, Fender and Gibson and everybody else is just going at both ends. Gibson just broke ground on the acoustic plant. They have most of the electrics and solid bodies are all made over in Nashville, and the acoustics are made in Bozeman, Montana. And I still talk to all of those guys there on the floor, and they just broke ground on a new huge facility to connect to it to help meet the demands.
The argument can be made that the pandemic did save Gibson.
Well, they were already, in restructuring, and, the owner just had a lot of people upset with, trying to reinvent the wheel and, doing some kind of kooky stuff with the guitars designs that had been around iconically for years. And, they were he had already sold the Memphis plant, to try to stop some of the bleeding. And it really was a place where I think, as I understand it, even the lenders that was going to handle the restructuring said that they wouldn't allow it. I think it was Jeffries was saying that they wouldn't allow it unless Henry left the company, because he had such a bad track record of trying to, be changing things in a cowboy way. Mm-hmm. And so they got this new guy is, a guy that gets into companies and rebrands them as what they were. Like he did Levi Strauss and I think either K2 or Vocal Skis, and he's a guitar player, and all the guys I talk to at Bozeman anyway, they love it. He comes in and it's like, hey, you guys, why don't you have music playing while you're doing your stuff? It's what you do. Like that kind of mentality. Like let's make it great again, as they said. But I have nothing but the utmost respect for the craftsmen at that Bozeman plant, because every guitar I get in here, if it's on the wall for more than a month, I'm amazed.
Wow. Like
high-end stuff. And these are players that know what they're doing with them, right? It's like a chef looking for a sharp knife, and they come in and, I make my own saddles for them and everything. But I think a bigger facility for them to help meet the demands of clearly the playing public is a great idea. And it shows the commitment that they have. Like in the middle of this, where, we're starting to come out of a pandemic, I hope that's what I'm feeling. That I hope that that's what's happening, that they can show that we bid in and made a bigger facility to help meet those needs. And that's aggressive and scary, like we were talking about earlier, doing something that's not for sure.
Yeah. Well, man, we could talk for hours.
Jay, you're the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. It's always such a great topic and out of the blue. I mean, I love it. You didn't talk about Eddie's playing style like everyone else did for, clearly months, but more about the developments that were a result of such a great, aggressive, driven mind for music in general. So fun.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, perspective, especially for Van Halen fans who just knew the music. And I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there that know Van Halen, that hear about Eddie being innovative and hear about Eddie developing all these things. And, it's like speaking a foreign language to those people. So hopefully this episode makes them understand a bit more of what he meant to the limitations and exceeding those limitations of the guitar and the influence he had on custom guitar makers like yourself, and,
right.
And how, I don't want to say he lived in poverty, but how not having the means to buy things and not having, coming from a family that had the means to buy a guitar, that was a good guitar, meant that he had to develop this stuff. Meant that
he was just hungry.
Yeah, because
he was hungry.
Who's to say if he would have got a Fender Strat, if his dad would have bought him a Fender Strat at the age of 11 or however old he was, he would have been maybe a different player, right? Maybe he wouldn't have had that motivation to build something and develop something and create joy for thousands upon thousands of people. I mean, that's just, I love it when that perspective comes. Like, he was born into a situation, and I'm sure there are worse situations for many people, but he had to find a way to make it happen, and he didn't stop until he found what he was looking for.
Yeah. God bless him. It changed the way I build guitars for sure.
Yeah. Mike, it's been awesome, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. You call me anytime you want, and hurry up and get your kid out here and get in the shop at least just for fun, and get out of your spring in Chicago and get into our summer of Hermosa Beach.
We got to do it. We got to do it. So, all right, everybody, that's Mike Longacre from Mike's Custom Guitar Shop is it Custom Guitar Parlor? Or Mike's
it's at Mike's Guitar Parlor.
Okay. At Mike's Guitar Parlor in Hermosa Beach, right on the pier there. It's a great spot. If you're ever, down the beach towns like Manhattan, Redondo, I don't even think it's that. It's like 20
They're
minutes.
only a mile apart, each one of them. And so if you're in one of those cities, you can walk here.
Yeah. And
as you're walking down Pier Avenue, before you hit the sand, I'm on the left side.
Awesome. Go check it out, people. Go check out his shop. I'm Jay Scott. This is The Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast, part of Pantheon Podcast Network. Like and subscribe wherever you listen. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for stopping by. Stay strong. Stay healthy. And we'll talk again soon.
So damn easy. And then one night in stunning victory, she decides and you agree she's leaving. Will you ever be the same? Will you ever be the same? When push comes to shove, I believe it was inevitable. That's when push comes to shove. Could this be the one that got away? I get the message, guess I knew it all along. Says you're a stranger here in paradise, you fool. It seems like 40 days and 40 nights since someone you